But
Yes. Anyway, Nathan, are you ready to get into this cult?
oh, I can't wait.
Yes. Okay. So today we are going to talk about the School of Prophets and the Lafferty murders. So by the title, I'm going to go ahead and give some content warnings. Content warning for religious trauma. Content warning for murders. It's in the title. Content warning for just all around bad vibes. If you're not,
Yes.
if you don't feel like bad vibes, this is not going to be the episode for you. But I also want to start out with some spoiler warnings, because if you're planning to watch the show Under the Banner of Heaven, do it. It's so good. Nathan, I know I've told you to watch it. Have you watched it yet?
Not yet. I'm going to watch it after this.
It's so good. Well, I'm about to spoil everything for you. But if you're anything like me, once you find out something is a true story, you've already started to Google everything about it anyway. Do you do that, Nathan?
Yeah, you start researching it on the side, even though
Yeah.
you're going to probably spoil it for yourself.
Oh, I spoiled the show for myself about 15 minutes in. Yeah. Another thing I want to start out by saying, there are normal people in the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yes. Please do not take this as that all people that are of the Latter-day Saints are horrible. No, there are great people in that religion.
Especially people that don't know any I don't know any people of the Latter-day Saints that are actually offended by the phrase Mormon, but just in case you are, I all the Mormons I know are nice, normal people. However, in this story,
they are not.
None of those nice, normal people are around. Have you ever seen the play Book of Mormon?
Yes.
It's so fucking funny.
It's
so fucking
hilarious.
Okay, so we're going to start this story where I'm going to explain a little bit about the history of, a little bit of the history of Mormonism, and explain what the School of Prophets is. So the term School of Prophets, in connection with the Mormon Church, was first used by the founder of the religion, this guy named Joseph Smith, who is a fucking piece of work.
Yeah.
We could do a whole This Fucking Guy episode on Joseph Smith.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy there.
Let us know in the comments if that's something you want. He originally started what was called the School of Prophets as kind of like, it's pretty innocent, actually. It's basically just like the church, quote-unquote, elders get together to discuss theology and the Bible. It's Bible study, but patriarchy. Like, women aren't allowed. No girls allowed. But it's kind of innocent. They're just getting together to shoot the shit about the Bible. Let me do a quick TLDR on Joseph Smith. So he was born in 1805. He married a young woman named Emma Hale. Emma's parents hated him. They did not want her marrying Joseph Smith. Emma's parents were smart people. But he was like, but babe, God told me we should get married. And she was like, you can talk to God? And he was like, yeah. And so they eloped. People were easier to trick back then.
Yeah, right. Like, whew. If somebody was like, yeah, God spoke to me, we're supposed to be together, I'd be like, maybe that's schizophrenia.
I'm going to get a restraining order real quick. Yeah. So Joseph then forms this religion because God gave him some golden plates with writing on it that only he could read, which is very convenient. Basically, the whole premise of the religion is that America had a lot more to do with Bible times than we knew. Who knew?
Nice.
Like, did you know the Garden of Eden was in Missouri?
All right.
And again, not meaning to mock people that follow this religion or their beliefs, but really, all religions are dumb. Like, if you look at, like, the beginning of any, like, it's all sort of like, okay. But yeah, but this one's just newer. Also, there's this really icky part of the Book of Mormon that talks about that there were two groups of people in biblical America, and one group God didn't like, so he gave them dark skin as a punishment.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I hate this. It's like, let's just go ahead and casually build in racism to our religion. Yay.
there's a line in the play The Book of Mormon, because in 1978 they were like, sorry about all the racism we had in there. And there's this line in Book of Mormon here. He's like, I believe that in 1978 God changed his mind about black people. But basically, yeah. So the Book of Mormon does teach that, having dark skin is a curse. Cool. So Joseph Smith is what I'm getting at. Roundabout idea is that he was a cool dude with cool things to say. But a big thing about Mormonism, and the reason that they were so controversial from the jump, was that they were real into polygamy.
Yeah, like it's like built into their religion. Like you're not able to get to the celestial kingdom and the highest of this if you don't have 3 wives.
Again, not modern day, but now fundamental Mormonism. Yes. They believe that you gotta have wives on wives on wives on wives. It doesn't really roll off the tongue like babies on babies on babies on babies, but wives on wives on wives on wives. In his life, Joseph Smith is said to have married like 40 women.
Whew.
The youngest being like 14 years old.
Why can't we get like,
why can't we not do that? Right?
Like, at least minimum.
Yeah. And in 1844, he was shot by an angry mob. Him and his buddies were shot. So that's the condensed version of Joseph Smith. So let's leave him there. So the modern day church is a lot more chill about minorities. Like I said, in 1978, God changed his mind about black people. And they prefer to be called the Church of Latter-day Saints, or LDS. So fast forward to 1960. Zoop. We're going to go to Salem, Utah.
Anytime a town's named Salem, you're just like,
ooh, trials.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, what's going to happen?
So there's this guy that he just passed away a few years ago, but he lived a long life. His name is R.C. Crossfield. And he published a book called The Book of Onias. And because he believed that he was a prophet of God, and so he called himself the Prophet Onias. So basically, the Book of Onias has a website. It is a 90s fever dream. Please check it out. But in the book, God has told Onias that, like, hey, the modern day church is playing too fast and loose with all of these rules. Like, everyone is too chill. We need to bring back some fire. We need some brimstone. We need some polygamy. I heard you typing. Were you looking up the Book of Onias' website?
Yes, I was.
Now, like I said, polygamy was a part of the old school teaching. But it was actually I didn't realize this. Polygamy was only an official part of the Mormon Church for 50 years. Polygamy has been shunned by official Mormon teaching since 1890.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. In 1890, the church's president was like, we're not doing polygamy anymore. We keep getting run out of town. It's not chill. It's, we want to be nice, normal people, so we're not doing polygamy anymore. Now, that is the church's official stance. Have people continued doing it? Obviously. Yes. But the church's official stance since 1890 has been, we're not into it. Does that surprise you? Because I feel like
it does, because I thought it would have been much later.
I thought it was like the 1940s or something like that.
Yeah. But looking at it and just thinking of the logistics of it, and this is where it has become controversial, polygamy, is because when a man has multiple wives and each wife has 10 children, well, guess what? He doesn't make enough money to be able to provide for all of them. So what ends up happening is child labor. They're living in very, very poor conditions with not a lot of food. And there's always one family that gets all of the support and all of the other ones just kind of get put on the back burner. So it's kind of sad.
Crossfield, and he goes to the leaders in his specific church. And they're like, hey, God is talking to me, and he's mad that we don't have lots of wives. Super sorry, but you're all going to hell. And so he got excommunicated from his church.
Okay.
Which, I mean, can you blame them?
No, absolutely not.
And so that's whenever he just goes off on his own. Actually, all of that was in Canada. And so after he gets excommunicated, he moves to Utah, and he becomes a low-level cult leader, as one does when facing rejection. I know when I get rejected, I'm like, start my own cult, you know. So he publishes this Book of Onias, which, again, you can find online, using the pen name Prophet Onias. And he fills it with all these revelations that he's had from God. Nathan, have you heard that phrase before, revelations? Do you know what it means?
Your revealed things.
Like God has revealed, yeah. In this specific term, you understand that means like what God has revealed to me. Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, very similar to like the Book of Revelations in the Bible was the revelations to John, I believe, or one of the prophets, and God was speaking to him and telling about the end times. So it's just basically God comes to you and is able to reveal what's going to happen in the future or in the past or whatever.
Right. So that the prophet Onias, Robert Crossfield has he's written a book about like what God has revealed to him. And he updates the book several times between the 60s and the 80s, and he eventually changes the name of the book to the Second Book of Commandments. Because the if you're not into Christianity, or Ten Commandments is in the Old Testament, so is that part of Judaism as well?
Yes.
So if you're not into an Abrahamic religion, Ten Commandments are like these rules that God gave to Moses, being like, "Hey, I got some rules," and now this guy named Robert Crossfield is being like, "I got some more rules," like so.
I know. I've always found that so weird that people are just like, okay, yeah, you're another prophet. And when explicitly in the Bible, it's like whenever there's someone else saying that they're a prophet, it's bad. Probably not. Yeah.
So in 1982, quote unquote, God, y'all can't see it, but every time I'm going to, in this story, say that God told somebody, I'm putting God in quotation marks. Quote unquote, God tells him to set up his own school of prophets like Joseph Smith had. So he does. Headquarters are in Salem, Utah. And honestly, if Crossfield and his little gang of religious zealots had never met the Lafferty brothers, we would not be talking about them right now. Because honestly, they were harmless. Were they preaching polygamy? Yes. But they weren't hurting anybody. I don't think I would want to hang out with them. But they were just a bunch of weirdos with beards talking in the mountains, you know?
Mountain men. Okay.
They were fine. Or what? Utah has mountains, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yes. Sure. So they weren't hurting anybody except for maybe their wives. Being like, I want more wives, you know? Yeah. LDS scripture, there is this bit about the quote-unquote one mighty and strong. And that says that one day the church is going to fall apart, the world is going to go to shit, Satan's going to come up and take the world by storm, but then the one mighty and strong is going to set everything right, is going to be our savior. Onias was so like a big part of Onias's school of prophets is that we are looking for the one mighty and strong. We are at that time. The church is falling to shit. Satan's going to be here any day. We need to find the one mighty and strong. He didn't think he was it, but he thought he was put on earth to find that person.
I feel like this is very common in culty religions where the world's going to shit, everything's falling apart.
Doomsday, yeah.
Doomsday's coming. You're either on board with us or you're dying in brimstone and fire.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it is.
Though at least with this Crossfield dude, he didn't put himself there, but he was like here to find them.
That's at least
whatever.
Nice.
I don't know. It is what it is. All right. So let's put a pin in the School of Prophets, and we're going to do a pivot like Ross and Friends. Pivot! We are going to meet the Lafferty family. The Lafferty family was a really well-to-do Mormon family in Utah that was a really, really influential family in their community. And as Mormon families go, there were a shitload of them. We are not going to meet every member of this family because I don't want to be here all day. We're going to meet a handful of them. So first up, we have Daddy Lafferty, Watson Lafferty. He was a successful chiropractor in Utah, and he was very active in the church, very active in the community, and he was very, very, very strict with his religion. But however, it was still like the mainstream Mormonism, like one wife. He married a woman named Claudine, who unfortunately he was very abusive with. Oh. And they had babies on babies on babies on babies, who he was also very abusive with.
Gosh.
Bad times. Watson, like I said, he wasn't fundamental Mormonism, like where he went back and like, he was still mainstream Mormonism, but he was very fundamental in his beliefs about the patriarchy. There is this belief in LDS Church where men get a thing called a priesthood. When they turn about like 13 or so, they can take their priesthood, which means they have a personal relationship with God. They speak to, like, they not speak to God in a weird way, but they, like, God communicates with them, and then they take that communication and manage their family. Women don't get this special relationship with God. Only men do, and it starts when they're about 13, 14, something like that. So, and it's called the priesthood. And so he took his priesthood very, very seriously. And in this setup, women don't have a very good time if their priesthood holder in their household is abusive.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, no.
Because their priesthood holder could be like, well, God is telling me to hit you, you know?
Oh, gosh. This is it's already getting icky.
And if you believe in that, like if you've been raised in that and you believe in that, you are like, oh, shit, God wants me to get beat up, you know? And so that's the situation that Watson had formed in his family. Women are second-class citizens. Good time or bad time, Nathan?
Oh, this sounds like it's terrible.
Not a good time. He also didn't believe in modern medicine.
Oh, gosh. These religions that are like, oh, modern medicine, antibiotics, what are those? Like, oh, gosh.
There's a story about one of their daughters' appendix. Just one. It's just one. Appendix. So there's this story about one of his daughter's appendix, like, almost burst. And he tried to treat it at home with massage.
That's not how it works.
That doesn't stop an appendix from erupting. Nope, not at all.
That's not how it works.
Not at all. And he refused to take her to the hospital until it was clear that her appendix had erupted.
Oh, God.
Because he was like, I'm just going to massage that out. Holistic medicine. And I love holistic treatment for rashes. You know?
Not infections.
Not that one of your organs has exploded inside your body. He had another son who shot himself accidentally. It wasn't like fatal. He made him wait like 3 days to take him to the hospital because he was like, let's see if we can't just like put some, I don't know, some homemade remedy on it. Yeah. So yeah, don't worry with the whole like medicine thing. He does eventually end up dying of completely treatable complications from diabetes that his family doesn't call a doctor about. So.
Oh my gosh, that just frustrates me.
Yeah. Justice does come eventually. So next up, we're going to meet Ron Lafferty. So we don't know for sure when Ron was born, but he was 78 when he died in 2019, so he was likely born in about 1941. Ron, though like a practicing Mormon, he was nowhere near as hardcore about it as his dad. Like, he actually really hated his dad. And he really, he would talk about how when he would see his dad, beat his mom, how he just, like, wanted to shoot his dad. Like, he like, it seems like Ron did some work on himself initially. Like, he went in the right direction. And so, like, whereas all the other Lafferty sons followed in Dad's footsteps and became a chiropractor, he started his own construction company. And so Ron starts out being a pretty cool guy. He's still a Mormon, but not like a super patriarchal guy. He meets a woman who's not a Mormon named Diana. She falls in love with him. She converts, and they seem to have a very happy marriage. He starts his own business. He gets involved in local politics. Everybody likes him. He seems to just be like the perfect fucking guy. But like when people are like, you and your dad have a weird relationship, he'll be the first to be like, yeah, my dad's an asshole. I hate that guy.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So now let's meet another Lafferty brother. His name is Dan. He's about 6 years younger than Ron. But Ron basically raised Dan because there's so many fucking kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Dan and Ron, however, have completely different memories of their childhood. Like, Dan is like, I mean, Dad maybe hit Mom once or twice, but he never beat her. And it's just sort of like, so I tend to believe Ron on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Dan was always like, Ron was my ride or die growing up. If I got picked on at school, my big brother would take care of it. If one of my other siblings was picking on me, like, Dan would take care of it. It seems like, or Ron would take care of it. It seems like Ron, from an early age, decided that his little brother needed protection. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's you find that a lot in Mormonism, where the children end up being the caretakers for the other children, especially when there is an age gap of 5, 6, 7 years, because they watched them grow up and they were really close to them as children, so they feel the need to really take them under their wing.
And especially in a family like that where there's so many siblings that, like, yeah, you might get overlooked, so you kind of need, like, someone to look after you. So Ron just kind of stepped into that for Dan. So growing up after school, Dan did a mission trip to Scotland, and he met a divorced woman named Matilda. And Matilda had 2 daughters from her first marriage. But Dan was like, hey, God is talking to me, and he says that we should be together. And Matilda was like, oh, well, who am I to argue with God? So she converted to Mormonism, and they got married, and they moved back to Utah. Dan was always a little bit more fundamental than Ron. He was also a little bit more of a loose cannon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it sounds like he was a little less predictable, less put together.
Yeah. Less put together. Maybe even a little bit jealous of how popular Ron was. How Ron was maybe a little bit more popular. Ron was maybe a little bit more handsome. Ron got voted on the city council. You know, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sibling rivalry.
A little bit, but fine. But Dan had some libertarian views. Nathan, for anybody that listening that doesn't know, what do libertarians kind of view? Like, what are they?
Libertarians are more of a, I guess I would say, like a live and let live type of political.
How do libertarians feel about paying taxes?
Oh, they don't want to pay
They don't want to pay any taxes. Dan thought taxes were dumb. Dan would, like, go to the grocery store and, like, buy a bunch of groceries and be like, when they would tell him his total, he'd be like, no, my total before tax is XYZ, and that's what I'm going to pay. I'm not paying. Can you imagine being, like, the clerk at the grocery store just being like, oh, fuck? Like,
that's not how this works.
That's not how, again, the lady from the commercial. That's not how any of this works. Yes. All right. So next up, we have one more brother. Obviously, I think there was like 10 Lafferty kids, so we're skipping over a lot of them. We're going to the youngest child of the Lafferty family. His name is Alan Lafferty.
Okay.
He's the youngest kid in the entire family. Nothing about Alan is particularly remarkable, if I'm being honest. And then we're going to introduce one more major player, and her name is Brenda. Fall in love with Brenda a little bit. Brenda was she was a first runner-up in beauty pageants. She was outspoken. She was charismatic. Fall in love with Brenda for a little bit. Okay. She was raised in the LDS church. But you know when we were talking about the normal, nice Mormons? Mm-hmm. That's her family. She's not a Lafferty. Okay. She's not married. She marries into the Laffertys, but she's born to this other family. They drink coffee from time to time. You know, they like yeah. Her parents. Well, she was in college, but her parents wanted her to like travel the world before getting married. Like they're nice, normal. We're talking about the nice normal
don't get
Mormons.
Married at age 14.
Yes.
Go experience life, grow up
Have
a little bit.
career. Yes. So Brenda went to BYU, which is like the Mormon school. The Mormon school, Brigham Young University. So she went there, and she was studying journalism. She had a dream of being a TV news reporter, and she had a job for the local news station for BYU campus. So she totally probably could have been like a Utah news reporter. And she was really popular and smart and pretty and charismatic, and we love Brenda. So Brenda was different than the women in the Lafferty family. Mm-hmm. She had been taught, it doesn't seem like in her family, I'm sure they still like were taught at the church that they grew up in about the priesthood and the da-da-da-da-da. But it doesn't seem like it was practiced in the household she grew up in. The women had just as much say as the men in the household she grew up in. So how do you think the Laffertys are going to like her?
Oh, not at all. Because, she's an independent woman and she speaks her mind and she is educated and doesn't take no for an answer.
Yep.
Yep.
So, unfortunately for Brenda, she met Alan Lafferty in the early 1980s. They got engaged not long after they met, which I think is like, it's a huge downfall of religions where you can't have sex before marriage because you're just so fucking horny. You're going to marry somebody. So you
just to have sex.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to say that to be ugly. Sex is like a normal part of life. You want to do it, but if you can't do it till you're married, of course you're going to get married to the first guy you really, 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 really like, you know? Because you want to bump butts, you know? Bumping butts is beautiful. Queen's podcast, you heard it here first.
Bumping butts is beautiful.
Yeah. So they got engaged, and her family was like, what? They were like, no, you need to finish college. Then we want you to live on your own for a couple of years. Then we want you to go like do a gap year in Europe. You need to live life. You need to live, laugh, love.
Oh no, not that old thing. But I mean, let's be honest. Like, take a step back. Like, you want. Like, for me personally, I was raised by parents who were a little bit older. Whenever they had me, they were 30 and 33 whenever I was born. But just like you said, they had experienced life. Yeah. They had traveled. They had good jobs and they were stable. And so my childhood was very cultured and stable and not like they were mature. And so that's what her parents wanted was, hey, you need to mature and get older and learn before you start teaching little children what to do.
Or like you need to, there's a whole wide world out there. See some of it before you settle down. But again, And I don't mean to bring it back to sex in a crass way, but I feel like if they were allowed to have sex before they got married, it wouldn't be such an urgency to get married at 20 years old, you know?
Yeah. Because, I mean, the hormones
your
are
hormones
raging.
are off the chart. And if the only way you're allowed to bump butts is, like, after, like, she puts a ring on it, you know? Like,
yeah.
Anyway. So, she marries Alan Lafferty her senior year of college. And this was fast. This went really fast. And I guess they didn't really talk about it. She gets pregnant right away. And Alan's like, well, no, you're not working. And she was like, no, I wanted to work, even though I'm a mom. He's like, no, you're staying home. And according to, because when the TV show came out, they interviewed Brenda's sister. And according to Brenda's sister, like a month after the marriage, 2 months after the marriage, Brenda was like, what have I done?
Yep. That's usually what happens in these sort of cases is it's like, I just got married to have sex and the sex isn't that great. No,
but well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. We don't have those details. What we do have is that she was like, shit. Like, yeah. I don't.
Made a mistake.
We've made a mistake, yeah. She got offered a job to work at BYU as a teacher, like before she had even graduated. And she wanted to take it. But Ellen said no. And it started this huge fight. And yeah, right after their baby, who they named Erica, was born, she went to the church elders and like asked about getting a divorce, and they talked her out of it. Ugh.
Yeah, like, that's not even that long.
Can you imagine like having a brand new baby? Like her baby was a newborn and she's talking about getting a divorce. How bad do things have to be if you've got all that pressure of a newborn and you're like, I would like a pressure of divorce on top of this? It must. Yeah. The marriage must have been shitty.
I think this really goes to show how their two different upbringings really clashed. As she wanted to be independent, but he was taught that women are dependent on their husbands and should I don't want to say this because it sounds bad, but women should be not only subservient to their husbands, but should treat them as this.
Well, they're the priest holders. They're the one that can talk to God. Yeah, exactly. Ugh, hate it. No, but like, so in the church, even in like the mainstream church of LDS, you basically have to prove like physical abuse or cheating to get a divorce. Those are like the only ways. Which I just feel like, or you could just leave the church and like live a happy life, but whatever. So now let's back it up and look at the rest of the family. When I came to the rest of the Lafferty family, some people were on the fence about Brenda. Some people didn't love her because the other women in the family were quiet. They did what they were told. And she was loud and opinionated. So she was not as popular with her in-laws as she was with everyone else she met. But Dan, the one that doesn't like paying taxes, Dan, the one that's a little bit more traditional, he hated Brenda from the jump. Okay, so that's the family. So we're going to fast forward a little bit, and in the 80s, like the mid-80s, Dan, the middle brother, we've already kind of touched on it, he decided he wasn't paying taxes anymore. And he decided, like, you know what, I bet there's something in our religion that backs up me not paying taxes. That's like gonna like vindicate me to not pay taxes.
Let me cherry pick from the scriptures to find where I don't have to pay taxes.
Yeah. But so there was this pamphlet called The Peacemaker that was printed during Joseph Smith's life. Joseph Smith said he had nothing to do with the printing of The Peacemaker, but people still kind of argue if he did or not. Unsurprisingly, the Prophet Onias has it on his website. It's only 15 pages, so I skimmed it. The teachers for the modern day Mormon religion do not, they're like, we have nothing to do with this pamphlet. Like, they don't like it. So let me tell you a couple of things that it says in it. The Peacemaker says that Adam was enslaved by Eve. And that's why he ate the apple in the garden, because she was his enslaver and he had no choice. And so since after that, God's flipped the roles. And now basically men are the enslavers of women.
That's not fun.
It's not fun at all. Oh, and he starts it off. He starts it off in this way where he was like, I don't want to write this, but it needs to, like, oh, it falls upon me that I have to write this. Super chill and cool thing that it says is that if women are ever in a position to hold power, confusion and not peace rages in society to the root. He even goes so far to say that nunneries are evil because they're run by women.
What? Oh
Yes.
my gosh. Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
There's also some super cool things about, like, if a woman cheats on a man, she should be publicly executed. But if a man cheats on a woman, well, he doesn't owe her anything, so...
What? Oh my gosh, this makes me mad.
Super chill, super cool. All right, Steve's about to come in. Action. So the main takeaway from this pamphlet has nothing to do with taxes. It's all about how a woman is bound to a husband under the law of marriage, but a man is not bound to a woman under the law of marriage. So everything she says and does is controlled by one man, her husband, for as long as she's alive. And then a few pages later and a couple of mental backflips later, it's like, and that's why it's okay and even encouraged for the man to have lots and lots of wives. And the wife has no ground to complain. And actually, you don't even have to tell your wife you're taking a new wife.
What? Like, okay, she gonna find out.
So this is what Dan finds, and he hyperfixates on it. Like, he gets real obsessed with the peacemaker. Again, modern day Mormons do not believe.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, that has nothing to do with us. I actually found a video on YouTube, this Mormon guy that's just got a channel, and they talked about this, and he was just like every couple of seconds he was like, by the way, no. But yeah, Dan gets it. He gets really obsessed with it, and he slowly gets deeper and deeper and deeper into these fundamentalist teachings. And so he takes his kids out of school, first step. And we're not paying taxes on food, so we're growing our own food now. The city provides electricity. We're not using electricity anymore. I don't want to pay taxes on that. He mails his social security card, his birth certificate, and his marriage license back to the state. It's like, I don't need these. I don't recognize I wouldn't even know where to, like, who do you send it to? Like, the government, clerk. Like, I wouldn't even know who to mail it to, but he doesn't. He's like, we don't need these anymore. You have no authority over us, which I'm sure they were like, what? Okay. So he tells his wife, Matilda, we are living a completely different lifestyle now. And basically Matilda becomes a prisoner. Matilda can't drive. She can't take phone calls. She can't have friends outside of the house. She now has to homeschool these kids. She doesn't have any background in teaching. And he gets abusive.
Oh, gosh.
To the point where it became so normal that one time they were at a family function and she said something he didn't like, and he spanked her in front of the family.
What?
Like, in front of, like, the brothers and stuff.
How humiliating.
Right? Dan had, like, physically abusive, demeaning. I hate this for Matilda. Hate it. Dan has really gone off the rails. He doesn't think he should pay anything that's going to have money back to the government. Not doing it. So they are like now like dressing like Little House on the Prairie, living off the grid, secluded. Ugh. I hate it. And as he starts to get deeper and deeper into this way of thinking, he starts reaching out to more fundamentalists. And Dan eventually links up with our buddy, the Prophet Onias.
Oh, no.
And he becomes a member of the School of Prophets. And Dan is obsessed. And he starts telling all of his friends and families about it. So there are like 4 other Lafferty brothers outside of the 3 that we've already discussed. And at one point or another, all of the brothers join the School of Prophets along with Dan. And Alan went a couple of times, but then when Brenda got a hold of a copy of the Peacemaker pamphlet, she was like, you're not going to this anymore. And so I guess he was just sort of like, okay, it wasn't that important. Okay, cool. Something kind of cool. You know how we're always talking about, like, I wish we knew what somebody thought? Brenda did keep a journal that has survived.
Good. We know what she thinks.
Yeah. And around the time when he came home talking about this cult that his brothers were in, she, in her journal, starts talking about creative ways for her to put money aside. Why would she want to put money aside that her husband wouldn't know about?
So she can run.
Exit strategy. Yeah, that is how unhappy she was. I just hate that she... Again, it sucks when you got a little kid, but, like, I feel like if tomorrow, even if I had a little kid, if my husband started being mean to me, which he never would be, like, or if I would have no qualms about just being like, well, anyway, nice knowing you. I just hate that she, like, felt so stuck like that. So, initially, oldest brother Ron, who up to this point kind of seems like the voice of reason, he was really against the School of Prophet shit. He went to one meeting, and he stood up and he goes, you are the reason that people hate Mormons.
Ooh, that's some strong words, but he's not wrong.
He was like, this crazy shit with, like, all the wives and hating the government, this is why everybody thinks Mormons are crazy. Like, he was like, we need to stop this. No, I'm leaving. And he gave Dan, like, a talking down to in front of everybody, just being like, you're brainwashed, you're crazy, I am not into this. I think he even told him, you make me sick.
Ooh, drama. Family drama. I'm here for it.
I know. Now, the School of Prophets is very pro-plural marriage, like we said. Mm-hmm. And as if Dan's family hasn't suffered enough. Remember how I said his wife was previously married and had 2 daughters from her first marriage, right?
Yes.
One of those daughters has given interviews. And she says that eventually, after their switch to this fundamentalist living, Dan started giving her older sister special attention.
Oh, God.
Oh, I know.
It's sometimes, and it just feels like, did he join this religion just to be able to get to the daughter and access the daughter? It was a way for him to excuse it in his head of, oh, no, I can do this. That's fine.
Dan comes up to Matilda one day and is like, so I've been talking to God, quote unquote, I've been talking to God. And God told me that I need to take your oldest daughter as a second wife.
Oh, I hate it here.
She was 14.
Oh,
Why?
I hate it even more.
Why is it that when men say God is talking to them, it's always about sleeping with 14-year-olds? It was the same way in the David Koresh story. Joseph Smith's youngest wife was 14. Why? God's talking to people. Why isn't he talking about, like, a cure for cancer? Why isn't God talking about how to world peace it? Like, why is it always like God's talking to me and he wants me to sleep with this 14-year-old?
Because it's not God.
Because it's not God. It's just men that want to sleep with children.
Sick perversion is what that is.
Blah. So, in the TV show, if you've watched it, at this point, Matilda basically tells her girls to run away. That's not what happened. However, it seems like for whatever reason, Dan lost interest and like moved on to an adult woman for his second wife.
Okay, at least there's that.
Yeah. But we don't really know because in real life, like one of Matilda's daughters did that one interview, but Matilda herself does not talk to people. She does not talk to press. She is like quiet. She does not want to be a public figure at all, which can you blame her?
No, I wouldn't either with all of that garbage.
So we don't know Matilda's opinion on anything except for secondhand, except for at her husband's court hearing during his trial. She just said, I prayed that he would die.
So it wasn't a very happy marriage, it sounds like.
When he spanks you in front of his family and wants to marry your daughter, no,
not good.
But when he took a second wife, she was so relieved because his attentions were elsewhere. So
maybe that's why some of these polygamous things live on, is because they're just like, at least he's not abusing me anymore.
At least he's not here. Yeah. So, it's the early 80s. Do you remember in the first Selena episode when we talked about like her parents had that Mexican restaurant, but then there was this huge like economic like recession?
Yeah.
Same recession. Ron's construction business takes a big hit. People aren't building houses. But he was in the middle of a huge project. A project that he had put his family's home on like a reverse mortgage for.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah. So the recession hits and all his jobs get canceled. And so he's like barely making money. He's got like 7 kids. And he gets depressed like all in like a span of like a month. Like everything goes from great to belly up. Like he loses all these contracts, and then him and his wife Diana start fighting. Diana does talk to the press still sometimes, and she talks about how they almost had like their marriage was almost too perfect until this happened. And then he becomes abusive, and he starts just like he's just having a bad time. And he needs a fucking win. And so he starts going to the School of Prophets. Like, with a different mindset this time.
No, not again.
So the whole Lafferty family is in this cult, except for Alan, basically. Brenda freaks out. She's already not happy in this marriage. But now she's like, your family are all part of a cult. Like, she's talking shit on his brothers left, right, and center. Anybody who'll listen. This isn't a huge community either. And she's telling Alan, your brothers are crazy. She's telling everybody at the church, Ron and Dan are fucking crazy. And Ron and Dan get excommunicated from the church.
Oh, this is intense. Lots of drama
yes, and made a very good miniseries. And so, like, they get excommunicated. They are just like, Brenda's responsible. What the fuck, you know? So the family is not vibing in harmony, is what I'm getting at, you know?
Yeah, it's not sounding like there's lots of love in this family.
And one day, and this is where everything really fucking kicks off. One day, Ron comes home to his wife, Diana, who, remember, she also wasn't raised Mormon. So obviously she's not going to be on board with this super fundamentalist stuff.
Yeah.
But he comes home one day, and they have a 14-year-old daughter, because of course they do. And he's like, I'm going to marry her to this dude that already has 2 wives. What would you do? What would you do if you were Diana?
I would get my daughter and run and leave, because I'd be like, this is not about to happen. She's a 14-year-old's not going to marry this old man that already has 2 wives. Nope. Yeah. Sorry.
So what she does is she picks up the phone and calls Brenda, because Brenda is the most independent woman that she knows. And good. Brenda tells her, you have options.
Good.
And what is that? The text is, you have options. The subtext is, bitch, grab your children and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And that's what Diana did. She took her 7 kids. She left no note. They skipped town while Ron was at one of the meetings for the School of the Prophets.
Oh my gosh. And this is something that you see sometimes in these fundamental, even today, where women will just leave the husband and just take all the kids and never talk to them. Yeah, that's
7
crazy.
Kids. How bad does it have to be for you to be like, I would rather raise 7 children on my own than be with you for another day? Yeah. Now, kind of in the midst of all this, their dad, Watson, died. And the family home kind of became like the headquarters for School of the Prophets. Like, that's where they were having all their meetings. And the mom, Claudette, kind of became like a classroom mom. She's bringing around like orange peel, or no, like orange slices and like juice.
Apples and peanut butter.
Yeah,
and, like snacky.
She can definitely hear what they're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so it was around this time that the Crossfield dude, a.k.a. Prophet Onias, decides that he thinks Ron is the one mighty and strong. Do you remember?
No.
Do you remember when we were
Yes.
talking about earlier how there's this prophecy that a one mighty and strong will come along in like a doomsday situation and bring us all back from doomsday, right?
Yeah, so they think Ron is that guy.
Onias decides Ron is the one mighty and strong. Put yourself in Ron's shoes right now. Your wife has left you. Your church has excommunicated you. You're bankrupt. But then someone comes to you and says, you are the savior of our religion.
He is like, finally, I've got something good going for me.
He needed a fucking win.
Yeah, he's desperate. He's just desperate.
Yes. And so Ron takes this shit seriously. He's like, yes, I am the one mighty and strong. Ego boost. And so Ron's ego is just out here getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the entire family, except for Alan and Brenda, are getting deeper and deeper and deeper into the School of Prophets.
Oh gosh, this is not getting any better, and it already started off horrible. Yay!
Bad times for everybody. So it's probably not surprising to learn that around this time, Prophet Ron started receiving revelations from God. Quote unquote God. He would sit at a typewriter and wait for God to start speaking to him and start typing it out. It's kind of like a Ouija board. But it's a typewriter.
Oh my gosh.
And quote unquote God writes this really creepy letter to Ron's estranged wife, Diana. And it's basically like, hey, you left Ron. You shouldn't have done that. I'm going to forgive you if you come back right now. And it's like, Ron is lonely, and he is my servant, and he's not meant to be lonely. He can't serve me correctly when he's lonely. I'm giving you X amount of time to come back, and if you don't, I'm going to kill you. If the only reason I haven't killed you already is because you have 7 kids with him, and because he loves you. But my patience is running out. Unsurprisingly, this did not woo her back to him.
Wouldn't do it for me either.
Wasn't the sweet talk that he thought it would be. But then the big revelation came. And it has since been called the removal revelation. How does that sound
great.
Doesn't sound great.
No.
In which God told him that I have plans for you, but these are the people that are obstacles for those plans. And I need them removed, a.k.a. killed.
So, okay, let's backtrack.
Yep. What questions do you have before we move on? Yes, please.
Yeah, pretty sure in the Bible, one of the 10 Commandments is thou shalt not kill.
I guess unless God told you to
it's like, how can nobody question that? How can nobody in the School of Prophet be like, wait a second. Like,
The Old Testament is full of murders, though.
Yeah, it is full of murders, but it's like, what? No. Oh, God.
Yeah.
This is terrible.
Any other questions before we move on?
I'm afraid that if I ask them, it's just going to make me hate it here more.
Oh, you're going to hate it here so bad. So this is right in front of their mom. He's talking about, like, who they need to remove, and mom's just bringing out orange juice and stuff. And also in front of their brother, Alan, who, like, stopped by to, like, visit people. It's a little, like, on the fence if Alan was still sometimes attending the School of Prophets meeting against Brenda's wishes. It's a little bit, we don't know.
Just being like, oh, I'm going to visit my family.
Yeah, going to see mom, but, like, actually, yeah, we don't. So Alan was there when Ron said, God wants me, has this, like, revelation of removal. And it was, like, a list of 4 people, and 2 of them were Brenda and her baby.
What? Like, how's a baby gonna be an obstacle for you?
I'm so happy you asked. Quote unquote, that bitch Brenda, her baby will grow up to be a bitch.
Wow, that's awful.
Erica's a year old.
Oh gosh. If you have if you want to kill the mom, that's horrible. But the child's 1. They're still, like, you can still raise them to not, quote unquote, be a bitch. But I'm pretty sure Brenda wasn't a bitch. You're just crazy. But, like, that, oh my gosh.
Brenda, keep in mind, Brenda told Ron's wife, you have options. Isn't it so convenient that now God is like, gotta kill Brenda?
Yeah, convenient, aka it's really just Ron saying it.
Yes, yes. And so he says this in front of Alan. If you were someone's husband, and if you're, like, out and about, or not even someone's husband, just friend. Let's say we were out and about and someone's like, I'm gonna kill that bitch Katie. Would you tell me about it?
Yeah.
Alan doesn't tell Brenda about this. Alan just tells Ron, well, I will defend with my life, my wife and child. But he doesn't tell Brenda. Why do you think he didn't tell Brenda?
I would hope it would be because he didn't want to scare her and have her fearing for her life. He thinks he can handle it with his brother, but something tells me that's not the case. We
don't know. This is complete conjecture. But my thought is he knew Brenda already had 1 foot out.
Oh. That makes sense.
If he was like, my brother said he might kill you, she's done. But her family lives in Idaho. Her parents live in Idaho. So she could have gone and stayed with her family in Idaho, where the Laffertys were never going to find her.
Yeah.
But he didn't tell her. He decided that, like, nope. Maybe, I feel like maybe at the front part of his brain, he was like, I don't want to freak her out. But maybe at the back part of his brain, he's like, but I also don't want to give her another reason to leave. Does that make sense?
No, that's perfectly valid, like, in his mind of why he would do that. Yeah.
So he just went home, didn't tell his wife. There's this another guy. His last name is Brady. I can't remember his first name. He goes home, and he writes an affidavit. He writes a date. He addresses it to the police department. And he's like, on this day, Ron Lafferty said some crazy shit. He said he wanted to kill and named off the 4 people that he said he wanted to kill. Because there was 2 other people that we're just not going to get into that didn't get killed. But, and he's like, Ron Lafferty wants to hurt Brenda and her baby. This guy has this notarized. And then he puts it in a drawer in his desk at home. He does not mail it to the police.
Then what?
So he can have proof in case something happens that he had nothing to do with it.
Oh my gosh, like, no, just go ahead and send that over to them to prevent the whole thing from happening.
I feel like this is worse than if you had done nothing. Because now it's just making you look like an asshole on top of doing nothing. You know, like, ooh. Yeah, how about how about tell the cops? How about,
right.
Like, I'm just imagining where, like, going to get that notarized, too. I wish we had, like, a quote from, like, could you imagine someone, like, do people read what they're notarizing, or do they just notarize things, like, okay, well, then that person could have called the cops. Like, I just, Anyway.
This is exhausting.
So all these people knew that Ron is out here talking about killing Brenda, and no one told Brenda that her brother-in-law thinks God wants her dead. Fundamentalist Mormonism, not like modern day, they have this practice that they believe in called blood atonement. Have you ever heard that phrase before?
I have, actually. That is something that I've gone down a rabbit hole myself about, but yes.
What does it mean then?
So blood atonement is essentially like you have
to pay for your sins with blood.
Yeah, you have to pay. Like, praying to God isn't enough.
Exactly.
You have to physically bleed like Jesus bled to absolve you of your sins.
Yes.
So it's like
Ron decides, like, yeah, we need Brenda to do a blood atonement. She needs to pay with her blood for what she's done. Meanwhile, over the next few weeks, Dan and Ron have fully spiraled. Like, they are just, like, living in their own little world. They now both believe they are prophets.
There's only one in Mighty. There's only one. Now there's two?
Listen. It's like Captain Planet. With their power combined, they are the one mighty and strong.
How does someone not call them on their bullshit?
Ron is the word of God, and Dan is the arm of God.
Oh, no.
So it means Ron gets the revelations, and Dan carries out the word of God. And with their powers combined, they are Captain Planet, a.k.a. the one mighty and strong. Yeah, not cool. And so Ron and Dan are just talking openly about killing people. What fucks me up here the most is they're saying it in front of their mom. They're talking about killing their niece in front of their niece's grandmother.
And she's just like, cool, I don't want to protect my 1-year-old granddaughter. Awesome.
Her husband's dead. So her sons hold a priesthood she doesn't have, remember?
Oh my gosh, this is just like
isn't that
getting
so
worse.
Fucked up?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. Like I said at the top, nothing about this is fun. Super not fun. But isn't that so fucked up? Could you imagine? I mean, when I think about my grandmother growing up, like, I feel like if somebody would have been like, I'm going to kill that baby, she would have been like Terminator. Like, you got to get through me first. Yeah,
that's how it usually is they're like, parents and grandparents are protective of their children.
But her sweet babies are the one mighty and strong. So.
Oh my gosh. So she's brainwashed AF.
Oh, brainwashed AF for sure. There are a couple of people in this group that stopped attending the School of Prophets when things got murdery, which
good.
Cool,
good
but they still didn't tell the police. They still didn't tell Brenda. Like, I mean, I commend you for, like, leaving a toxic situation, but you still didn't do shit about it, you know? So, one day, Dan brings razors to the School of Prophets meeting. And he's like, we need to pray on these because they need to be anointed because this is what we're going to use for our blood atonement. And that's when Uncle Ananias was like, get the fuck out. Y'all cannot come here anymore.
Okay, so he's like, oh, but they're serious, so...
He was like, oh, fuck. He was like, I thought this was a metaphor. I thought the revelation of removal was a metaphor. Y'all gotta get the fuck out. But did he tell the police?
Nobody's telling the police, I'm assuming. No.
Like, all these people in this story are like, oh, I wasn't into it, so I left. And I'm like, if you didn't tell the police, if you didn't tell Brenda, then I don't give a fuck what you did. You didn't do shit.
Right?
In my
opinion.
opinion.
Oh my gosh.
Ron and Dan have gone full on to Psycho Town. Won't you take me down?
To
Psycho Town. Yeah, they have lost the plot. They are woo, 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 woo. And Ron tried alcohol and weed. As Mormons, you don't do drugs. He tried alcohol and weed. And he was like, you know what? I think God gave me a revelation that he actually thinks we should smoke weed all the time. Fair enough.
I like that part.
Fair enough. Dan thinks God is telling him like what horse to bet on at the track. Like so he starts gambling.
So God's into gambling and drugs and murder now. So this is great for God.
One mighty and strong, though it's two of you.
Oh
you're
my
gambling
God!
And you're drunk. So these people are completely different men than what we were talking about at the beginning of this story. You know, like just totally different. And it all comes to a head when, quote unquote, God tells Ron, all right, it's time for the elimination. All right, so everything from here on out is sad. You ready for it?
I think everything from here on up was sad.
That's pretty sad. July 24th, 1984. Brenda and her daughter, Erica, were alone at home, and Alan Lafferty was at work. Ron and Dan pull up to Brenda's house, and Ron gets out of the car and knocks on the door. Brenda doesn't answer. Ron goes back to his car, and so there's this story in the Bible with Abraham. Maybe you've heard of him. He gets a revelation that you got to kill your son Isaac. And then, so he goes to murder his son Isaac, and then this angel appears and is like, whoa, 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 dude, you were going to actually do that? JK, like, never mind. Okay, man, we get the point. You're super committed. Ron thinks that's what's happening. He's like, okay, she didn't answer. I've proved the point to God that I would do it if he really needed me to. So he goes back to the car, and he tells that whole story to Dan. He's like, she didn't answer, but I think it's kind of like a Abraham, maybe you've heard of him, Isaac story kind of thing going on. And then Dan just goes, fuck that, no. And goes back up to the door and knocks, and this time Brenda answers. I'm not going to go into the details. There are lots of podcasts. There are lots of articles. You can read about the details. I'm not going to go into the details. What you need to know is that when the Lafferty brothers entered that apartment, Brenda and her daughter Erica were alive. When they left, they weren't.
Oh my God.
I know. And these two brave prophets, what do you think they did after this?
They owned up to all of their issues and went to the police and told them everything that they had done.
They went to Reno.
Reno. Yeah. Reno, of all places.
Yeah. So there was a manhunt for them for about 2 weeks. Alan Lafferty was held in custody for a couple of days, thinking maybe he did it. And then he was like, y'all gotta find my brothers. And then they were like, why didn't you tell us about this if you already knew? And he was like, and so anyway, they found these two brave, the two mighty and strong in a line for a free buffet at a Reno casino. Reno. And so
wow.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So
and there's nothing like free food.
Look. I love a buffet. So they approach, the FBI agents that found them approach them while they're in line, and they act like, yeah, and? They're like, you're under arrest for murdering 2 people. And they're like, can we get our food first?
What?
Yeah. What? They were just like, and what's the problem here? Like, yeah. And the FBI agents were like, no, honey, you're going to jail immediately. And so that's what happened. So they get arrested, and after that, when they got to jail, it seems like after a couple of weeks, Ron had time to sit on and think about what he did. And he got very depressed, and he attempted to kill himself by hanging. He was cut down. He was unconscious. Like, they thought he was dead for 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And he was in a coma for like 3 or 4 days.
Whoa.
And then a few months later, him and Dan were like in the same cell, apparently. And a few months later, he tried to kill Dan. So they were separated after that.
Oh, my gosh. Oh.
Yeah. Dan, on the other hand, was always like, dude, God told us. Dan is alive in 2023. And he's still like, God told us. What's the...
Oh, my Lord. This is crazy.
So Ron was tried and sentenced to death in like the 1980s. But it was decided because after he tried to kill himself and was in that coma, his mental cognizance was, they were like, we need to try him. We need to do like some psychological test and then try him again. Which I don't know if I agree with, because he did the crimes before he caused what maybe would have, before he did what maybe would have caused his mental uncognizance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, he committed the murder whenever he wasn't killing himself. Like,
yeah.
The reason he killed him or tried to kill himself was probably because
he realized what he had done. Yeah, like once
guilty.
he had time to like sit there and marinate on it, because he's always, So he was he had 3 trials. He like kept getting mistrials, and he was finally tried again in 1996, and it had the same verdict, guilty with the death penalty. And in Utah, apparently, at least in the 90s, you can choose how you die for the death penalty. Mm-hmm. And he chose firing squad because that's the way that Joseph Smith was killed. He was killed by an angry mob. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Poetic Justice, whatever.
So I don't know about you. I struggle with my thoughts on the death penalty because it really goes against everything else I believe, I think. You know, I'm a vegetarian. I believe in rehabilitation. Mm-hmm. But if someone definitely did it, you know, like if someone killed you tomorrow and was in jail being like, I definitely killed that person, I don't know if I'd want my tax dollars supporting that. So I don't know. I have complicated feelings about the death penalty. He actually sat on death row for longer than anyone in Utah has ever sat on death row, but then died of natural causes. Fun side story. When he was doing his retrial, he wore a sign that said exit only because he believed that the angel Marino or something, some kind of angel that's also like a sneaky bitch, was trying to possess him through his butthole.
Why the butthole? Why?
Because homophobia.
Oh, yeah. Gotta love it.
Gotta love it. Anyway, so he died on death row of natural causes. The reason I bring up and we're almost done with this bummer of a fucking story. The reason, but it's gonna get so much sadder before we're done. The reason I bring up with my like complicated feelings with the death penalty, you know, like it's like maybe they just live out the rest of their life and they have to actually live with the consequences of what they did. If they definitely did it. And they can't do any harm because they're behind bars. Dan Lafferty, for some reason, was sentenced just 2 back-to-back life sentences with no possibility of parole. Okay. I don't know. He also because the jury had 6 women in it, so he told them, I do not accept this because I don't accept the judgment of women. And the judge went, well, fuck you. Bye. You know, like, so he was sentenced to 2 life sentences, no possibility of parole. And so you'd think, oh, he's in jail. He can't do anything. In the late 90s, this woman who was like 7 years old when the murders took place started writing letters to him. Her name was Christy. Christy was mentally unwell. And Christy was married with 3 kids. And her husband started visiting Dan. And her and Dan formed a father-daughter relationship.
Ugh.
And in 2008, about 10 years, so they had this relationship for 10 years. After 10 years, she abruptly stops visiting him. Supposedly they had a falling out. And then a few weeks later, she and her 3 kids died. She had poisoned the children and then took a heroin overdose.
Oh my God.
And it's thought that Dan told her to do it. Dan told her that the children would be better off. And so when they asked Dan about it, all he would say is, I'll miss them, but I'm happy for them.
Oh, so it's like he kind of is okay with the decision. So
I think we don't know, but I think he told her to do it, is my guess.
Oh my gosh.
And she was just so easily susceptible,
Oh my Lord, this man is sick.
And he's still alive. And so that's why I'm like, you know what, maybe we just go ahead and I don't know.
Because he's still essentially killing people even though he's in jail.
That was a real weird moment for me, because I'm like, oh no, if death penalty, I shouldn't agree with that, because once you're in jail for the rest of your life, you can't do any harm. But
he did.
So that's the end of my story. I'm trying to think of something to bring the mood up a little bit. But that's the end of the School of Prophets and the Lafferty murder story.
Crazy story.
You really need to watch the miniseries. And Andrew Garfield's character is made up in it, but he's so good. The whole show is so good.
I guess the moral of the story is that someone says that they speak with God, tell them to reach out to a mental health professional.
Yes. And don't base any of your decisions on what they say.
Yes. Good idea.
Oh, Nathan, have you decided what your cult's going to be?
Not yet. I think I'm deciding, do I want to go super dark, but you've gladly done that for me.
Or do you want to do a Uriel moment?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe I should do a Uriel light and happy and fun sort of thing. I don't know.
Besides Uriel, are there many fun cults?
No, they're not. But some of them are relatively harmless in terms of there's no murder, there's no child molestation and pedophilia involved. I'll try to find something, but guys, guess what? It might not happen.
It's about cults.
Yeah.
All right, Nathan. Well, cheers.
Cheers to this terrible story. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
Bye, guys.
Bye.